the amount of plastic that actually gets recycled are cripplingly low. And it turns out it wasn't just a random distraction like, oh, we thought this would work and then we should learn and move on to the next thing. It's quite possible that this was highly intentional from the large corporations that want to produce plastic, and the petrochemical companies are the input, the feedstock for plastic.
That spark of innovation, it's just waiting for the perfect combination of tools and talent to bring it to life. Welcome to Pitch, Build, Scale. I'm your host, Chris Fanchi, a recovering startup founder, veteran SaaS marketer, turned dev tech enthusiast and growth specialist. Each episode, we connect with the builders, the visionaries, and the problem solvers who are redefining what's possible with today's technology and pioneering the websites, apps, and software products of tomorrow. These are the conversations that transform how we build, how we sell, and how we scale technology businesses in a world where the tech evolves by the minute. Ready to stay ahead of the curve? This is Pitch, Build, Scale. Hello and welcome to today's episode. We have a very exciting guest. For those of you just joining the podcast, we are Big North Marketing and specialize in helping dev shops and SaaS companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn how to take your SaaS or dev business to the next level, make sure to stick around. And if you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs. We're really excited to have today's guest, Kathleen Egan, CEO and co-founder of ecomedes, a groundbreaking SaaS platform helping commercial building stakeholders streamline product decisions with sustainability and compliance data. Kathleen has spent her career scaling startups in tech and brings a unique lens to how data, AI, and environmental impact converge in the built world. Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here.
So I like to start with your personal background and your journey. So what first sparked your interest in technology and then startups in particular?
I've been working in technology all the way back to undergrad. So it's sparked a long time ago. I guess originally it was because I was better at math than English. And so I started going down a path of engineering and less on writing. And I started out as a programmer. My first job was coding, and I really liked the puzzle, but I also didn't like being alone. It's a bit solitary. So I moved gradually toward working on test planning, which was a little more social, and then eventually became more of a technology manager. And then I kind of sealed the deal by getting a master's in business instead of a master's in engineering. And that kind of brought me more to the business side of technology. But, I've always thought that it has immense opportunity to solve problems large and small. Sometimes it's the small problems that make the biggest difference in people's lives. And of course, when we're tackling large problems, such as global sustainability, technology is absolutely critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So where did the entrepreneurial side of things come in? Have you always been interested in being an entrepreneur, or did you just have opportunities in startups and fell in love with it? Tell me a
Yeah,
little bit about that.
I didn't even know about startups really. Several jobs into my career, and I was working at Calvin Klein and working on a technology project, and one of our vendors was a startup. And so I kept waiting for the rest of the team to show up, and he's like, nope, it's just me and my dog. And we kind of work in a garage, and that is the first time I had really heard of startups. And so I started researching it and, found out it was this whole large segment of the economy. I had always thought that small companies were low growth, like a mom and pop grocery store, just steady state. And I hadn't thought that small companies could be disruptors. So I started learning about that. I dropped what I was doing and went back to school to get an MBA to learn more about it, and have pretty much been doing only startups ever since, minus a couple times when I stayed and worked at the acquiring company for a few years.
So how did you find your way into the sustainability and environmental space?
Yeah, that one took longer. I've always loved the outdoors. I'm an avid skier and hiker and camper and biker, and could see some environmental degradation. But it really wasn't until I became a surfer and started seeing little bits of plastic in the tide line mixing with all the organic matter, and looked into it and found out about how much plastic was being consumed and used and how little of it was really reaching the recycling circular process. So most of it was ending up in the environment. And I started traveling around. It was kind of a boondoggle and an excuse to visit new locations to surf, but doing my own little plastic survey of, everyone's dying to know how much plastic is on the beach in Indonesia and El Salvador and New Zealand. And, they turn out to have really good surf too. So I found almost everywhere there was plastic, and then started working with nonprofits. And I think that nonprofits have a really important role to play, but alone they can't solve the problem alone. They need to have a partnership with the government in the form of regulation and also capitalism. And being an entrepreneur, the capitalism part really kind of grabbed me. So I started looking for a way to do it not just as a nonprofit volunteer activity, but as a full-time job.
So, have you had a chance to dig into the plastic recycling process? I'm just curious because I've heard people talk about how plastic recycling has actually been found to be fairly ineffective, and a lot of what we think is being recycled is actually just ending up being shipped overseas, or it's not really being turned
Yeah,
into
or
anything
incinerated
useful.
or dumped in landfills. Yeah, there's a lot of bad outcomes for where plastic goes, and I've dug into it probably more than most. I haven't been to that many recycling plants, so I haven't dug into it that part. But the stats, by region on the amount of plastic that actually gets recycled are cripplingly low. And it turns out it wasn't just a random distraction like, oh, we thought this would work and then we should learn and move on to the next thing. It's quite possible that this was highly intentional from the large corporations that want to produce plastic, and the petrochemical companies are the input, the feedstock for plastic. So it's all related. So a lot of the littering campaigns, even back to the I don't know if you are old enough to remember, there used to be an American Indian who was crying because people were dumping trash outside their car. A lot of
Right.
those campaigns were actually funded by the big companies who make the plastic, and it was sort of a shift in responsibility to say, hey, consumer, it's your fault. You're the ones that are littering. If you would just bring it back into the bin, it'll be recycled and everything will be good. So it may have been highly intentional. And now we see electric vehicles cutting into the business of petroleum, right? Reducing the market share because some cars run on electrons, not on gas. And so that lobby is trying to put more and more of the petroleum into plastic. So we're actually about to see quite a surge in the number of factories that crack the ethylene molecule in petroleum to make the plastic. And they'll be looking for more and more places to put plastic. So everybody's got to be pretty vigilant. Like, do I need this to be plastic? I think is what we should ask ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point. Back to ecomedes, how did you decide what approach did you decide to take to solve this big problem, and how are you going about it?
Yeah, so I have a co-founder, Paul, who was the guy with the problem, right? He was a lead consultant working on construction and found that the amount of data that had to be processed and reprocessed by each project team to do lead, and lead is just one way to describe the sustainability of a building. It's imperfect. It's the most perfect one we have and the most used, but even that doesn't capture all the elements of every single product in a building. The amount of data to do that is overwhelming. And so teams either were doing it poorly or just weren't doing it. So, the vision was with a capable data structure and the availability of data to all the different roles on the project team, that you could remove this obstacle to not just sustainability, but just to basic efficiency. Teams never have enough time, both in their day and like hitting their deadline. They never have enough money to hit their budget. So anything that could take work away from them and automate it is welcomed. And so that's the approach, which is to say, let's get the data where it needs to be and let's put it in a format that each person could digest it, even if one person is a designer and they digest it differently than this other guy who is a construction manager.
Hmm. Is there concern in that industry about data privacy, or are they pretty anxious to let you get access to the data in order to help them be more efficient?
There's some concern, but not as much as others. In general, the manufacturers, if you take one of our clients is Certainteed, they make drywall, for example. They want people to buy their drywall, right? So the more information they could put out into the project team to evaluate it, the better that's going to go for them. So that is not sensitive. There is a lot of sensitivity though around pricing. So you don't just walk into a store and see a drywall price and decide how many sheets you're going to get. In the commercial space, you have to go through a distributor and a rep and figure out what is the pricing for your project, for your volume, for your timeline. And so once that price is given, that part is very sensitive. So we do need security and password control over that kind of information. So lots of it is not sensitive, but then pricing in particular. There's also another part that is sensitive, which would be probably surprising to most people. Some of the big companies have their own standards in addition to LEED, in addition to the common material framework and other things. And they are very protective of what their standards are
Hmm.
because they don't want to be overwhelmed by sales reps calling them to say, hey, my product meets your standard. So you'd think they'd make the standard broadly available so everybody could meet it. But there is some sensitivity around that too.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So, was there a moment when you knew that ecomedes could be more than just a mission, but it could actually be a effective and successful business?
We're still in that phase between kind of initial product market fit and product market fit where it's flying off the shelf for a big segment of the market. Our market fit tends to be best at the early adopters of sustainability. So we're still seeking that and seeing it. And the place that really lights me up about the economic part of it is to see these large projects sitting in ecomedes. Something like the JP Morgan building in New York. It's being built on Park Ave, and it's going to be one of the greenest buildings in New York. It's a whole block. It's a really cool looking building, and I see people evaluating ceiling tiles and drywall sheets and different kinds of flooring for sustainability. So at a project of that scale, that's really appealing to the manufacturers to get in that project, and they're vetting it for being green. So if every building ran like that JP Morgan building, I think we'd see even faster. But those are where I see, okay, these are lots of zeros after the order. It's not just a person buying for their home. It's a 70-story building buying drywall, and that has a lot of scale.
hmm So, is your solution pretty white glove at this point? It's not something that someone could just pick up off the shelf and install for their business. They'd need support to get it set up and running, right?
There's different use cases. So there definitely is a pick off the shelf. We're a little bit the Google or the Wikipedia of green building products. So if you're looking to find a product and want to see what kind of transparency data it has and gather up that information and maybe get 3 alternatives, right? That is something that most people now, they have to know their way around some of the terminology, but many people could pick that up. The white glove part comes in, so that's like a user experience. The white glove part comes in more at the enterprise. So, and somebody like Certainteed, they have many complex data sources within their own ERP, and then they have about 15 different external third-party sources that evaluate their products. And so combining that data in a way that makes it useful and easy to access does take a little bit of white glove. We typically, for a small customer, we launch in about 2 months. For a very big complex customer, it could take 3 or 4 months. So it's not long in the world of ERPs, but that is where the white glove comes in. And if you're talking to someone who's on the buyer side, their requirements are usually not captured in a way that it's ready to just plug into software, right? They've been doing it through consultants and through Excel and PDFs, right? There's a lot of wiggle room. once you go to put it in software, you're like, okay, this is gonna be consistent every time. And so
Yeah.
there's some white glove there too. And we're doing that right now with the government of Canada. They have Canadian green procurement requirements and the Department of Energy here in the US. And we work with builders, developers to do that too.
So how'd you go about finding those initial few clients, and how are you getting in with a big company or big organization like the government of Canada?
I say there's a couple elements. It's definitely not through your standard marketing awareness, right? We're not taking out billboards on 101 or ads on Google. The first great, as I say, marketing movement for us is a reference. People who are using it, they love it. It saves them a lot of time and they pass it on to someone they know. And sometimes that's just their buddy who's in the same role and it kind of, okay, another sales rep's using it. But sometimes it crosses the buyer seller line and someone on the manufacturing side says, hey, you're asking me this question over and over. Here's a tool. And then they start to develop some needs. So that's number one. Number two is subject matter expertise. Our team knows this data inside out, even better than the manufacturers who make the products themselves. They don't. Everyone at their company knows all the nooks and crannies of these different third-party certifications. So by bringing that expertise, we can go to like the phase quickly of saying, hey, here's this big complex thing. Here's the few things you need to do to get there and get it out to market. And I'd say the last one that helps a lot is we track interest, right? So we're almost like a Nielsen rating system for the demand for green building supply. And we could see that across our whole client base, across the most used database in the world. So we have those insights and that's helpful. People want to know, like, should I bother getting this rating system? And in this market, some are saying, hey, I got to pull back a little bit. Where should I pull back? And our answer would be pull back on the ones that are getting the least use. And so we could provide that.
So which part of most organizations are you going into? What kind of job titles or roles are looking at this kind of thing?
Yeah, on the manufacturing side, our first sort of champion is often sustainability. They are the folks who have to do this manually and who don't get home at night on time because they've got these huge queue of requests that need to be, hand built for their marketing team or for a sales rep. So that's usually where we start. From there, we kind of spiral out. So the marketing team, sometimes sustainability is in the marketing team. They are trying to communicate product attributes in general into the market. We help them with this very complex part, the sustainability attributes. And then our most frequent user is the sales rep. So sales reps who have customers asking this question, they just want to churn and burn, get the answers as fast as they can and keep the deal moving along.
Yeah.
So we work across all those groups within a manufacturer.
So let's shift a little bit to the technology side of things. How has AI played a role in building out the platform and developing your solution?
So we built the solution before ChatGPT, and we're now putting AI in where we see high potential areas. And sometimes it works great. We've gotten two very good applications up and running and humming and sort of working on the third. And we've also found, for example, like with lead credits, you really want to know the product has the lead credits. You don't want to have any room for error or hallucination like, hey, maybe this product has lead credits. So when it comes to getting that certification, it's brass tacks, right? It does or it doesn't. And so having AI tell you if it has lead credits, that is a direction we didn't go in. The logic, good old fashioned logic is great for that. An area where AI was really helpful was, let's use our drywall example. The marketing department writes a description of the drywall, right? There's a description that is used in marketing. Many times, some of the players, the stakeholders, they want to know, well, what's the sustainability product description, right? How would you describe this product in English in terms of its sustainability? Marketing team doesn't want to write a second description. They certainly don't want to include all the elements of sustainability in their primary description. So we use AI to look at the data we have and say, here's all the technical stats on the sustainability, write a succinct in English description of what's important. And that has worked really well. And then the reps can cut and paste, right? And share that out, and anybody can understand it because it's not in the jargon that so much of our world is.
So how open to the technology is the industry that you're speaking to? Are they pretty excited to adopt these new technologies, or are they still a little skeptical? I'm sure a lot of them are relying on Excel sheets and some pretty dated things to do the job right now.
Absolutely. They are on Excel sheets, email, PDFs, even meetings, right? Just like taking notes in meetings. I'd say at the individual level, there's a lot of enthusiasm. People see it. I just presented to some folks from Webcore Construction today, and he was like, well, how much is that? And I said, well, up till now, everything I've showed you, that's free. Like that's our open product. And he almost fell off his chair. He was like, well, that's amazing. Like that's going to save me so much time. And, right off the bat, that's the reaction we often get from the individual. From the enterprise, there is more caution. And I don't think it's that they're not excited about technology. It's just they haven't budgeted for it properly. So they don't plan ahead for there to be a solution to do a lot of the manual things that they see happening. So they don't have a budget. And I think, that holds them back. And then we do have a few folks in our ecosystem who have said, no AI on meetings, like the meeting AI agents aren't allowed in the room,
Hmm.
no AI on our data, who have, they are taking an approach, let's call it a conservative approach, that they feel there could be harm coming to their brand or their products, and they have sort of shut the door on it. For us, that just means we have to be really smart about identifying and attributing, this was a first party. We were already doing it because you have first party claims and third party claims. Now we could start having artificially generated claims, and that would be probably the least reliable data point.
Hmm.
There are a lot of companies creating EPDs, environmental product declarations, which is one of the more rigorous documents that could describe an individual product, and they're going to start generating those with AI. So I think as long as we're clear on where the data came from, it should get over that concern. The budgeting is harder to harder to. If you don't want to wait a year, right? They see the solution and say, okay, we'll put in our budget for next year. We do hear that a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Do you look for companies that maybe have like an innovation office or something along that line where they're maybe a little more forward thinking?
Definitely on the buyer and the construction side, that's been critical. We have a customer called Arco Murray, and we work with their innovation. It's specifically a technology innovation group. And that has been really critical. With the manufacturers, the innovation groups are usually product innovation, right? So can we make the base of this Aeron chair out of sea-bound plastic? And add more circularity to the chair without hurting the structural integrity of it. That's what the innovators are doing at the manufacturers. So we haven't found too many groups who are like specifically innovating on technology to reduce manual effort, but I will keep my eye out for them.
Very interesting. So, what is a big win that you're chasing over the next 12 months as a company?
So we just released a new feature that's called collaboration, and it's a beta, but it's the idea that if I'm working on a project and let's say I've got 20 products and price and quantity and all the data that goes with each product, you're never alone. There's never a situation where you're the only one who has to look at it and you can make all the decisions. So it's by nature a multiplayer game. And so our first kind of step into that direction is the ability to share the list of products, get a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and notes on each product and on the whole project so that you can have it all in one place, right? Not to scour through your email. What this guy say about that thing? And that has just gone live recently. We're taking that vector much further into trying to change the way the stakeholders work together on projects. We'd like to get rid of spreadsheets, right? If we could tell the industry you don't have to use spreadsheets anymore to communicate product data, that would be an amazing thing to do. And you couldn't do that till you could share it, right? So that was like kind of a necessary step. That would be an amazing thing. And we've just started kind of our paper test on this concept of a material optimizer. So taking in the needs for the different stakeholders and letting technology help them find the very best candidates with all the knowledge about all the products. So that is, we're at the beginning of that journey, and finding out where the real people in the market would use it and where it would help them, and then bring that to life. That would really be a great thing to do in the next year.
So internally, would you say your focus is more on scale, operation of efficiency, sales velocity, or something else entirely?
We're in a situation where we're trying to balance a couple of those priorities. So we are close to cash flow break even. And so we've decided with our board that would be a good thing to do. So we're moving in that direction, and we plan to have that by Q4. So that, of course, implies a certain amount of spend, not a lot. um, at the same time, we're trying to repeat the use case that we know we have great product market fit on, and achieve that cash flow break even through growth. So we're not, like I say, hyper growing, but we'd like to add a handful of customers every month, and we've been doing that so far this year. And then, the third priority, and we're trying to juggle them all, is taking what we have and moving it further into the market, out of that early adopter segment, into something that every player in the market needs. And as you know, it's not always the same product. They don't have the same type of problems. Getting to that majority part of the market with something that's in high demand, and that they need. And so that might mean that it's not all about sustainability. It's about helping people evaluate products, and when they want to know the sustainability of it, the data is there and ready to go. But if they're just evaluating them and want to confer with a manufacturer on pricing and availability, we want to meet that need too.
Yeah. So what would you say is the biggest bottleneck that you're facing as you're trying to grow towards that cash flow positive state?
So one bottleneck is just, we have a small and mighty team. On the technology side, we have a couple amazing full stack engineers who can do it all. Our system has many parts to it, between the data collection and the treatment of it, and then the publishing it out into different portals and configurations. So they're busy all the time. It's a hard role to ramp up. And it's an expensive role. So it's one you'd rather not just, start hiring. So that, the many priorities that hit their desk is probably the biggest challenge we have. Our current customers all want more too, right? And sometimes they're willing to pay for it. Sometimes they're willing to pay a considerable amount for it. And so meeting the needs of today for a great customer, right, who's been with you through thick and thin, and then also looking to the future, with that small team. So we've been trying to scale it through adding some exceptional contractors, and some point resources to help free them up. But when you have awesome full stack engineers and they could do it all, sometimes they're really in the middle of it. So that's probably the bottleneck we spend the most time on. On the sales side, we had a comment from a board member at our board meeting last week, that you've got some deals that were like 100 days, 110 days, and then some deals that were like 10 days, 15 days. Is it because of the size of the company? And it wasn't. Some of those fast ones were big companies, some of the slow ones were small companies. The biggest correlation we see is that when we have a partner who knows the customer, a consulting partner is the most common that we see. It could be somebody else, but that, to help navigate what's really happening, as opposed to vendor outside looking in, that is a bottleneck we identified. And so we're scaling up and rolling out an approved consulting partner program. The first one was launched. The second one's about to launch, and we'd love to launch 10 more before the end of the year.
Okay. Yeah, very interesting approach. Given that referrals and partnerships like that are so important, how do you balance between building the features that they're requesting versus what you think would be make the most sense to move the company forward and open more avenues for you?
Splitting time, trying to just split the resources we have in the most efficient way to feed both those needs, and sometimes saying no to things that customers want, and it's a good idea and we like the idea, but is it a world changing idea? If it's not, we got to really scrutinize it. We hit this dilemma a lot on the data. Um, Aggregate the most data, and to our best of our knowledge, um, it's the freshest and the most accurate. And then the next person behind us is hundreds of thousands of products less, right? Like we're way out ahead. So sometimes we look at it and we say, well, do we really need to go from, you know, 92% to 93% when the next guy is at like 50? Or can we make some trade-offs, and maybe permanent, maybe temporary, so that we could take some of that resource and put it on more of the future looking stuff. And those are hard to make because you hate to, I think the question is, do you keep building your current moat deeper and deeper, right? Or do you try to go build a new moat? And the new moat is hard to build because you don't know where to put it. The more the current one, it's like, okay, we got to just keep going deeper. So, getting the resources to do the newer, harder, but more valuable thing. I think that's one of the hardest things we're trying to do right now.
Yeah, that's true of pretty much every startup, right? You've got limited resources and so many ways you can go. It's always a challenge. So
Yeah,
I'll let
which
you out of
kind of
here
takes
on this
to
one.
hiring, right? Like,
Yeah.
does the team understand that? And when someone is really put off by it, it's kind of like, okay, did you know this was going to be a startup experience? Like, it's by definition understaffed, right? No startup is being properly run if you've got everything perfectly staffed. Then you're a running rate company, which is great. A run rate company, back to the mom and pop shop, like probably profitable, and everybody has a good life. If you're not changing every day, you're probably not a disruptive startup.
Or you're burning through investor cash real fast.
Or burning through that investor cash, yeah, which is a whole, that whole world is changing really rapidly too.
Yes, it is, definitely. So, hypothetically, if you had a magic wand and could fix or change one thing in the business right now that's either holding you back or slowing you down, what would that one thing be?
I mean, I would probably clone our full stack engineers and make 8 sets of them. That would be the first magic wand thing. I think the second, more realistic one, would be awareness. So we've been around for a while. In our little group of early adopters, we have very good awareness, but getting people to share, to help the spread of what we're doing without us having to spend a lot of money on marketing, that would be great. And the consultants are one way to do it, but they're not that big of a company, right? So finding some virality, that's why we work so hard on this collaboration. Right now, you can actually email it to a whole project team. Well, there's 6 new users that you could be emailing it to, and they'll have to sign up for an account. And they might say, guess what? This isn't the only project I work on. I'm also working on these other projects. So that's the magic wand we're actually trying to build. The cloning one, we gave up on building that one.
Well, Kathleen, this has been fascinating. Great conversation. I really appreciate you coming on the show. So, for folks who want to learn more about ecomedes, where can they find you and connect?
Yeah, so they could go to ecomedes.com. It's ECOMEDES, rhymes with Archimedes, the mathematician. And you can learn about the solution. If you're looking for products, up in the upper right, it will say view the product catalog, and that will open up our catalog. It's the largest of its kind. And any project you're working on, you can start putting green materials to work and make the building more valuable.
Excellent. Well, and to everyone that's joining us today, listening in, thanks for listening. And as always, please be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and keep building, keep scaling, and keep pitching. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Pitch, Build, Scale. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and we'll see you next time.